All right, so now I want to talk about some NFL topics. Okay, so first up, I want to talk about the modern dynasty in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, after the Bills game, it's a tough loss. They lose that game every year, but this year really felt like they might really try to win that one because of the record and some of the early season struggles. Now, after the trade deadline, there were a few concerns about the Chiefs. They did not make any trades at all. Frankly, I don't really understand it. I don't understand a lot that goes on with their front office because somehow it usually seems to work out, but it doesn't feel like they ever make the best decision. I just at some point you gotta think like, right? It feels like Brett Veach is getting carried by Patrick Mahomes sometimes because you look at what he's doing here, and you saw some of the backup offensive linemen were not good against Buffalo. Buffalo has not had a good defense this season, and they were getting pressure with 3 defensive linemen. Okay, on the last play of the game, the Hail Mary play, the Bills did what you always do on a Hail Mary play. You rush 3 and keep everybody back in coverage. They got pressure on Mahomes like that. That's just unacceptable for an offensive line. And I know there were some injuries. Trey Smith was banged up. Josh Simmons wasn't there. So you had Jawan Taylor was out for part of the game. So you had Wanya Morris and Jalen Moore playing as your tackles. And first of all, if I never see Wanya Morris play another snap for the Chiefs, I will die a happy man. And then I just don't understand the coaching decision to play Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has not been good in years, and I just don't understand why you would ever give him snaps over Kareem Hunt. He is slower, weaker, doesn't have as good a vision. It makes no sense. So I don't really know what's going on with the Chiefs right now. I was feeling really good about that team coming into this week, but after the Bills game, you just look at it and thinking they don't have defensive line talent. Their offensive line cannot sustain injuries. The running back room, the decisions that are being made there make no sense. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he got pressured on, I think it was 53% of his snaps. That is insane. Especially because, like I said, the Bills have not had a good defense. This has been one of the weaker Bills defenses in one of the weaker Bills defenses in recent years. I can't talk. And they made the Chiefs look like scrubs. And it just makes it. I don't understand it. The pass rush it's pathetic. I mean, the Chiefs' pass rush, this is one of the worst ones I've ever seen during the Mahomes era. I mean, the Bills' offensive line, they're good, but you see this against any competent offensive line they play. The opposing offensive lines will hold a pocket for 4 or 5 seconds against the Chiefs' defensive line. Because outside of Chris Jones, they've had nobody this year who's been able to make a difference. And even Chris Jones hasn't put up really any numbers because of, I think what happened to him was the same thing that happened to Kelsey, especially last year, but over the last 2 years. Because there were no other receiving threats, teams were able to play a much tighter coverage, commit more resources to covering Travis Kelsey. That same thing is happening to Chris Jones. There's nobody else who scares you on that defensive line. So teams are just able to full-on double him, and they don't have to pay for it anywhere else. So the fact that the Chiefs didn't trade for a defensive lineman, I haven't even heard that they tried to trade for a defensive lineman. And for what the Eagles traded to get Jalen Phillips, I would have liked to see the Chiefs try to trade for him. There was, there were different options. Quinion Mitchell, I think he went to the Quinion on the Jets. He went to the Cowboys. They traded first-round pick. It was a few picks. That's something the Chiefs aren't going to give up. But the fact that they didn't even try to trade for a defensive lineman is insane to me. I mean, this is the best Chiefs offense in years. And it seems like they might waste it by not addressing any of their problems. And then the coverages, I mean, it's always tough to react to the Chiefs versus Bills regular season game because it always seems like the Chiefs come in with a very vanilla, very basic game plan against the Bills because they know that they're going to face them in the postseason, so they want to save their best things for that point. And that's kind of been the story of the rivalry. The Chiefs averaged, I think, 14 points more in the playoffs when they play the Bills, 14 points per game more. So they clearly save stuff for the playoffs, but I just don't understand why you wouldn't try to win this game when you need the win for your record. Because this now makes the Broncos game after the bye week wildly important, because if they don't win that game, I think the division is probably out of reach for the Chiefs, because they just won't have the wins. The Broncos will at least split with them, so there will be no tiebreaker. And then the Chiefs are they would just be in a bad spot for the playoff race because the Jaguars have the tiebreaker over them. Because the way I see it right now, if the Chiefs want to make the playoffs, they can probably only lose 2 more games over the rest of the season. Maybe 3. But if they lose 3 more games, they will be lucky to make the playoffs with 7 losses. Because the bottom half of the AFC is terrible. But there are enough teams that will have decent records that you would really like to not be a 10-7 team in the wild card. So yeah, I mean, Brett Veach, sometimes it feels like he's a genius, but I feel like he really overvalues draft picks. I mean, the fact of the matter is I don't think he's a good top of the drafter. That was a terrible way to say that, but what I mean is he's not good at drafting in the first few rounds. He's an excellent late round drafter. He finds all kinds of diamonds in the rough. But the problem is that when you try to build your whole team out of diamonds in the rough, eventually you actually need some top of the line talent. There's a good reason those guys didn't go in the first round. Because, I mean, Isaiah Pacheco is a perfect example. You found a guy in the 7th round who was able to be a pretty good starting running back for a couple of years. And it was a great story. Because he didn't really have great talent. He doesn't have great vision. But he had the drive. He had the want to. The problem is, in the NFL, eventually you need to have talent on your team. And the first few rounds are where you're going to find talent. So if you want to look at who he's drafted in the first round over the past few years, I mean, you got this year, you had Josh Simmons, and he looked great for the time he's been playing. He was an excellent protector for Mahomes. Mahomes really trusts him. The problem is that I don't give Brett Veach a ton of credit for that pick, because everybody saw his talent, and everybody who analyzes draft prospects, every GM had pretty much agreed this guy might be a top 5 talent in this draft, but the injury history just made him a bit of a risk. So I'm not going to give you much credit for drafting a top 5 talent at 32. That is just, you got lucky that he got hurt. 2024. Last year, Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy was the first round pick. Again, he's been a good player so far. But again, the problem is, I don't know how much credit I really want to give him. Xavier Worthy was a great college player, and then he ran the 4.21. That's an easy, obvious pick. It's where it's where Veach actually has to make hard decisions in the first round that I don't love what I see. I mean, first round pick in 23 was Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I mean, you want him to be good, but so far he has not been good. He's not been worth a first round pick so far in his career. And I would be surprised if he gets any kind of substantial second contract. George Karlaftis in 2022. Again, he's been a really good player for the Chiefs. He hasn't done a lot this year in terms of putting up numbers, but really none of the defensive linemen have. But yeah, I mean, he was a pretty good player, which is what you can basically hope for out of the draft. But you would really like at some point to get an elite talent in the first round. You've got 2022. This was the last, I think, really good first round pick Brett Veach had, was Trent McDuffie. He obviously was elite. He came into the league and was basically immediately a top 3 corner. That's amazing. 2020 was egregious. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is who the dummy GMs would have taken. All right, just to be straight up, Jonathan Taylor, I think at that point he scored some of the most touchdowns in college football history. And sir, he scored more than anybody else. He was a great college running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he did not live up to his prospect type, in all fairness to the Chiefs. And Jonathan Taylor has had his injuries history, but I think a lot of that was because the Colts have been a terrible organization. So running backs on terrible teams just tend to get hurt. When you have a bad offensive line and you're taking hits behind the line of scrimmage, bad running backs on bad teams, elite running backs on bad teams, they just tend to get hurt. I mean, you can see Saquon Barkley on the Giants. He was getting hurt every year. He gets on the Eagles with the best offensive line in football, and this year just a very good offensive line. He's been very durable, even if he hasn't been as good this year as he was last year. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's not lived up to what his draft hype was. But it was also just a case of Brett Veach outsmarting himself. He tried to pick the guy who might be more useful for gadget plays. Seemed like he was a little bit more cerebral, instead of just picking the guy with all the measurables. And I mean, that's a draft strategy that can work for quarterbacks. For quarterbacks, you want a guy who's intelligent, who can get through his progressions, who can actually play the position. You'll take that over measurables. I mean, look at Anthony Richardson. He's the man. He's a monster, right? He's huge. He's as strong as a defensive lineman. He can throw the ball over a mountain. He can run as fast as a wide receiver. Can't play the position. He just doesn't have the mind for it. When you're dealing with running backs, that's not as big of a deal. You just want somebody who's an athlete. You want the guy who's the strongest and the fastest you can get, and that's what Jonathan Taylor would have been. I mean, you just look at it, and it's like you go back. That's basically the first round picks of Brett Veach's tenure. It's not really excellent, and he has been picking from bad spots. You know, they're usually picking from late first round. But you would just you want to see at some point more than one. If you've got 5 first round picks, you got to have more than one elite talent. Now, we'll see what Xavier Worthy ends up being. So far, he's on track. So far in his career, he's a very good number 2 receiver. He's not a guy you can force feed the ball to like Rashee Rice is, and where he can run an offense. You can't really run an offense through Worthy. He's a great piece. He's a great number 2, but he's not a number 1 guy. I mean, Rashee Rice, that's what I'm talking about when I say that Brett Veach is a very good mid to late round drafter. I mean, Rashee Rice is awesome. He is probably one of the 10 best receivers in the NFL. But if I recall, I think he was a 3rd round pick. He was either a 2nd or 3rd. So if Brett Veach could figure out a system to draft to be as good in the first round as he is in the middle and late round draft picks, the Chiefs would be in business. But right now, it just doesn't feel like they're good at acquiring talent. Every season, it feels like it comes down to, in the playoffs, well, it's just going to have to be the Mahomes and Reed show. Because eventually you get there, and it feels like the Chiefs are just always at a talent deficiency compared to the other contenders. So I don't understand the coaching staff. And again, it's like sometimes I wish they didn't win as much as they do, because then I could feel more justified in feeling upset at them. Because when you got this group of guys that just wins all the time, all they do is win, it puts a hard cap on how upset you can actually be with their process. But sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. And the coaching staff, I mean, I love Andy Reid. I love him so much, but I don't know if he still has the magic he once did. The play calling just feels more stale than it has in recent years, even though he's got more weapons. Some of the rushing stuff he's done with Rashee Rice has been really excellent. But the plays where I look at it and say that's classic genius Andy Reid feel fewer and farther between every year. And I don't know if some of that's Matt Nagy. The coaching staff at KC seems to love him. I don't really understand why, but you just look at some of the series they had in that Buffalo game. Like, if you have 1st and goal at the 1 and you walk away with 7 points, I don't care if you have the Raiders offense. That is a coaching issue. That's a play calling issue if you can't get 1 yard for a touchdown. Especially when you have a guy like Kareem Hunt, who's been one of the most efficient short yardage backs in the NFL. On 3rd and 4th and 1 so far this season, Kareem Hunt, you got to understand, Kareem Hunt is better than the tush push. All right, he's better than the early bird on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 combined. He's insane. And you have that guy, and you can't manage to pick up a yard in 3 downs. You walk away from 1st and goal at the 1 with three points. That is just straight up a coaching issue. There's no two ways about it. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom about the Chiefs. They still have played some excellent football this year. They were down a couple of offensive linemen against the Bills. So there are things that should get better. I don't expect the defense to be nearly as bad as it was. Leaving 2 tight ends open for massive bombs is just egregious, and that's not something that typically happens with Spagnuolo's defense. I mean, you could even see on one of the plays, one of the Chiefs linebackers, I think it was Drew Tranquil, he tripped over his own feet and fell down while covering, I think it was Dalton Kincaid on the first bomb. That's not something that usually happens with the Spags defense. I don't anticipate them being as bad as they were in that game again. So it's not all doom and gloom. Like I said, I mean, they're always at a talent discrepancy, so this year might not be much different. So still, the road still will go through them even as a wild card. The Chiefs, they've already shown they can win on the road in the playoffs. I mean, they won a Super Bowl the last time they had to go on the road. So, as long as they get to the playoffs, you still really do not want to play against them. And I mean, just a perfect example: if they make it if they make the playoffs, and their first round matchup is against the Colts as the 1 seed, well, I guess it would be if the Colts end up as the 2 seed, and the Chiefs' first round match would be against the Colts. What is anyone picking the Colts? I mean, some people will, but almost everyone who watches football, who talks football, is going to take the Chiefs because that's just what they are, a playoff team. That's a team, they're built for the playoffs every year. Every year it feels like the regular season is just a precursor to the playoffs. So it's not panic time, but it is time for some concern because they still have a lot of tough games coming up, and they really can't afford to lose very many games. Now, the schedule should open up. The Chargers, down both of their tackles, are not likely going to be a serious threat in the AFC anymore. The Broncos, I still don't know what I think about the Broncos. They win, but they win and look terrible. I mean, the defense looks great, but whenever they play another good defense, it feels like they're not doing, it doesn't feel like they do well. I mean, you've seen games like this week, they won 18-15 against the Texans. The Texans have a great team, but they're still not usually holding people to that low, especially not a team. The strength of the Texans is their pass rush, and the Broncos have one of the best offensive lines in football, so I don't understand why you're only scoring 18 points, especially when your defense holds the other team to 15. That means you've got the ball a lot. But, of course, they just kept going 3 and out, so I think the time of possession was pretty even. So the Broncos, I'm still not really buying them as a legitimate playoff contender. I think Bo Nix can be had if the opposing pass rush is able to get to him. Now, I mean, that goes for almost every quarterback, but I just don't know how well he's going to be able to deal with playing against several playoff level defenses. We saw what happened last year against the Bills in the playoffs. They just got embarrassed. Yeah, so that's kind of the Chiefs' playoff aspirations. It's time for it is mild concern time in KC. It's not yet panic time. If they lose against the Broncos, then it's like DEFCON 2. It's definitely panic, but if they lose to the Broncos, but it's not time to think that they're done.